Sergeant Rick Driscoll, United States Army, Iraq. Rick's one of my Iraq veterans. One of the first troops into Iraq. He went over in April 2003 to 2004. He served as a platoon sergeant with the Massachusetts National Guard, was a 52 Delta, his MOS, which is a generator mechanic. He also worked as a radio repairman. Tells a great story. He was heavily involved with the Wounded Warrior Project when I interviewed him. It was in Methuen, Massachusetts, February 4th, 2009. Rick has a very unique perspective of being in Iraq as a family man, family back at home, and the things he experienced and the contrast with all the wars that I've done. I want to thank Sean Johnson for sponsoring Rick's story. Sean, thank you again for coming forward and supporting my work and helping others to learn about the Iraq War through the eyes and ears of Rick Driscoll, Sergeant Driscoll. Sean, thank you for your dedication to our country, and like I said, to our veterans. And I say, God bless you, thank you. It's great working with you. Folks, if you'd like to sponsor a story like Sean, there's information in the video description on my website, larrycapetto.com. Click on Sponsor a Vet. You'll see a redesigned page of all my veterans, well, a lot of my veterans on there, and I'm adding more every day. So you can pick one and use their name in the sponsorship, and I'll do the rest. I'd encourage you to donate to my work. There's information in the video description below every video that I do, and that'll be greatly appreciated. This work is listener and viewer supported, folks. No commercials, no monetizing videos here, and you know why I don't do that. I'm heading to Texas Friday, November 3rd. I'm going to interview a Korean War veteran who's 90 years old. He's down in Bryan, Texas, and his family says he's got cancer. Would you come interview him? And I said yes. So I'll be flying out there. I haven't flown in 4 years since all the things started happening in 2019, but I'm ready. I'm ready, and it'll be a great trip. So I might say a prayer for me as I go to Texas on November 3rd. Thank you for watching, listening, subscribing to this channel. Thank you for listening to the Voice of History radio station and helping to support that. And as I say, sit back, relax, and listen to Rick Driscoll's story. It's a good one, folks. God bless you.
Military, it'll be 18 years in June between my active duty time and my National Guard time.
18 years in June.
18 years in June.
Where was your basic training at?
Basic training was at Fort Jackson, South Carolina in 1991.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, I almost went there. Yeah, I was joining my National Guard. It was right after, it was right in 91, and I was going to go to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And I didn't get the MOS I wanted, and things didn't work out, but that's where I was going to go.
There you go.
Anyways, okay. Your MOS again?
Is 52 Delta, which is a generator mechanic.
Okay. So advanced training?
Advanced training, actually, prior to becoming a 52 Delta generator mechanic, I was a radio repairman, and I went to Fort Gordon, Georgia for about 7 months for communications repair.
Okay. And then, so you weren't involved in the first Gulf War, right?
No, I came on active duty just as it was getting over. I went to basic training, AIT, and then out to Fort Carson was my first duty station.
Colorado?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Tell me why you joined the military. It was a family?
I joined the military for ROTC reasons, and things didn't work out with school, so I ended up on active duty, pretty much. So it's sort of a very long and complicated story I'd like to kind of put behind me.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. So at what point in your training are you deployed? I mean, it was like just a few years ago, or was it?
I was deployed from February of 2003, came home in April of 2004.
Okay. Your thoughts before you went? Were you wanting to go, gung-ho, ready to go?
I wouldn't say I was gung-ho. I had a wife and 3 kids, 10, 6, and 18 months at that time. And knowing that I was going to be leaving them behind was certainly very difficult. Because in most cases nowadays, it's a very team effort for parenting and household chores, and you remove one of the parents for that length of time, it's a complete stress and strain on the other one as well. So
you find yourself in Iraq. What time of year was that?
we left Fort Drum, New York on April 17th in 2003. It was 45 degrees. We stepped off the plane in Kuwait City the 18th of April, about 16 hours later, and it was 95 with, I'd say, close to 100% humidity. Nothing like going to Fort Drum to prepare to go to the desert, especially in April, upstate New York. So
was there training that could prepare you for that, or it didn't prepare you for that then?
It didn't really prepare us for the heat or anything like that, excuse me, but we were able to do realistic training as far as, ambushes and convoys. We're in a maintenance company, so part of our job is to run supply missions back and forth. So we had convoy training, ambush training, dismount point training up at Fort Drum, albeit we were in cold weather gear and didn't think, too much about it till we got to Kuwait, but we did a fair amount of training.
I'm going to kind of split our time between your deployment and then working with the Wounded Warriors here. Okay. I'm going to kind of jump around in my story here, but so you're there 15 months, you said?
Well, I was in Iraq for about a year, but the total deployment was from the beginning of February 2003 through May of 2004, so it was that for 14 or 15 months, but a year between Kuwait and Iraq.
Okay. Were you basically in one area the whole time, or were you?
I was, pretty much. We were in Kuwait for about 5 weeks while we waited for our stuff to get off the boat, all of our equipment, and then we were up near Nasiriyah, in Air Base Talil Air Base near Nasiriyah, pretty much the whole time.
Outside the wire? I mean, you were?
No, we're a maintenance company, and you really can't do a good job of fixing things if you're worried about getting your behind shot off. So they had us in a pretty secure area, but some of our guys did have to go out to do recovery missions, vehicles that broke down, and that was really when the danger was pretty apparent, was when they had to go outside the wire to do that.
So were there casualties in and around your area at all, or are you pretty far removed from all that?
We were pretty far removed, and excuse me, we did, the Italians actually, there was a big multi-task force there. They lost 6 guys outside the gate in an IED during our time, but as far as the American soldiers, I don't think we really had many casualties, if any, at least on Talil, or at least that made their way back to me. That there were so many soldiers, it's really hard to tell. So.
Well, living back here and hearing everything through CNN or however,
right.
It's unfortunate we don't hear about a lot of the good things happening. Can you comment on maybe some of the good things that happen over there while you're there, or just in general? I mean, because there are a lot of good things happening.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Again, we were there very early. We were one of the first National Guard units, certainly from this area, to go over there. And I know that some of the construction units, the engineers, were building and helping rebuild schools in the Nasiriyah area, helping with roads. We were helping with water purification, and our generator mechanics. Some of our generator mechanics actually had to go outside and had to sit down with one of the sheiks and helped do something with their generators to help get some of their water pumping from the Euphrates River. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I do know that we were involved with that. So there was definitely some good things going on over there.
Well, you hear a lot of reports about Fallujah and some of the fighting that has happened, and I've talked to some of the guys. And what's interesting with me is talking with the World War II vets, the veterans of Korea, Vietnam, and then those serving today.
Right.
There's an interesting contrast in how people will want to talk about those things. I find those that have been in combat today don't want to talk at all.
Right.
And that was probably common after any war, but I did have a few of them open up to me. These are 20, 21-year-old sergeants who were in combat, and the post-traumatic stress thing, and as we talk about what you're doing now, but I mean, it's like combat is hell. I mean, no matter how you look at it.
I think so. I was very fortunate to come back, all my limbs intact. We saw very little, if any, combat at all. And I would say mentally and emotionally, I was okay. There was some reintegration time with the family, but the counseling that we got at Fort Drum after we came back, take things slow, don't try to jump in because your spouse or whoever has been doing things for the entire time you're gone, and you want to ease into those routines. I mean, we had a very strong relationship before we left. It's even stronger now. And so I was one of the fortunate ones. So I didn't think too much about PTSD, but as we'll talk about when we get into what I'm doing now, I know that it's a very, very real situation out there, and a lot of people suffer from it.
And as the American public, I don't think we understand it.
I would say that's probably accurate. Unless you're maybe a nurse or in mental health, you probably have appreciation for it, because other people suffer from it too, not just the military. The loss of a child at young age, that would certainly qualify as PTSD. It's post-traumatic stress. If there's some stressor in your life, after that, you're going to suffer. You could suffer from it. So it's very real.
I think in World War I they called it the soldier's melancholy. In World War II,
Yeah.
shell shocked. Now we call it post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
I know a lot of the Vietnam vets have suffered with that.
I'm sure.
And I tell some of the people I interview, the Vietnam film that I produce is being used by the VA and the vet centers
Excellent.
to help guys with post-traumatic stress. I think it could be used for anybody, but and then we see ourselves in our current situation. And why don't we go ahead and segue in that a little bit? Tell me what you're doing now with the When You're Warrior Project, and I eventually want you to tell me some of the stories coming secondhand from some of the soldiers
Okay.
that have fought over there.
Okay. I'm back on active duty with the Massachusetts National Guard. I've been put on orders for a year, April to April. I am a platoon sergeant, and I have under me about 40 or so soldiers. We have the Community-Based Warrior in Transition Unit is what it's called. We have, there's been an initiative a couple of years ago to get these soldiers out of the barracks where they're going to their medical appointments, but in between that, they're in the barracks playing Xbox or their, Nintendos or whatever it is. And that's when the walls start getting a little bit closer on some of these guys. So the Community-Based Warrior and Transition Initiative was to get these guys out of the barracks, get them home, let them receive their health care at home, be with their families. It's a more holistic approach to healing. And my end of it is I set them up with a work site. Now they're on Title 10 activation, just like I am. They're receiving an active duty check every month from Uncle Sam. And instead of having them go to a few appointments here and there and then go home, we set them up at a work site, whether it's a VA outreach center where it's essentially in a volunteer situation. They're not being paid for what they're doing. We've had recent a collaboration with the Army Corps of Engineers in the area in Concord, the Department of Labor, FEMA. A lot of these agencies are now realizing that our soldiers need this kind of work. They're giving them meaningful work, and in some cases, they're even actually able to get them a job once they transition back into civilian life off of this program. Many of our soldiers end up going through the medical board process, which means they'll be medically discharged from the Army, and then that's it. They're no longer in the Army. Some of them have injuries that will prevent them from doing their civilian job they did prior to their deployment. The carpenter who's got a broken arm and back problems is never going to be able to swing a hammer. So through these initiatives, excuse me, with some of these other companies and agencies, we're able to get them out, contribute to the best of their abilities, and get them putting on the uniform every day. And in some cases, it's not this uniform, it's the khakis maybe and a polo shirt, but they're making a contribution. And as their skills increase and maybe their mental abilities are getting a little bit better, they can get more responsibility. And we've had some cases, as I mentioned, that we've had people hired on full-time by the Army Corps of Engineers. I had a woman who was at the Manchester Veterans Administration. She was working with the volunteers. They couldn't wait till she was done with the program, and the day she came off leave, the next day, she started her civilian career, is now Miss whatever instead of captain, and she is now working full-time, and she's able to actually send me emails about events and other things for veterans that I can forward on to my soldiers that are both still on the program and ones that have finished the program.
What type of injuries or wounds are these men and women recovering from?
It can be anything from limb injuries, IED explosions is a big one, and one of the biggest ones we have are now the TBIs, the traumatic brain injuries, where even if an IED goes off nearby, maybe the soldier doesn't have a visible wound, but the head inside the Kevlar, the brain gets a little bit jostled or a lot jostled, and they're seeing, even though you can't see it on the outside, it's there. And these are the most difficult ones, I think, to diagnose for the medical people. So that's a very common one as well.
And what about just your interaction with these people? I mean, what's the consensus of their stories? They do it again. They're glad they did it. They wish they would never. I mean, what do you hear?
It really, really varies. We have soldiers. Our office handles everyone from New England, New York, and New Jersey. So right now we have about 200 or so in the whole office. I'm responsible for about a fifth, or probably about a fifth of that, about 40. And it really varies. Some of them can't wait to get their surgery or whatever they have done and get back over it because their buddies are still there. Some of them have actually got hurt at their MOB station. So before the unit even left, they maybe were in a training accident. I had one soldier, young 22-year-old, he was burned while he was coming back from a training exercise in the back of his legs. He wanted to get off the program so bad so that he could go over and join his friends. It didn't turn out that way, but he is going to actually be able to go back to his National Guard unit, and he's very happy about that. So, and then there's some that are not so happy to be going back or not so happy to finish on the program. It's a kind of a cushy job. They don't do, some of them aren't totally engaged, and it's time to get moving into your life, and helping them transition from this program to the civilian sector is difficult a lot of times. So, and that's part of what my job is, to help them integrate and reintegrate back into society, both family and works, and the job.
One of the things with the Vietnam vets was they were deployed as individuals, and that was contributes, I think, to a lot of the problems of them coming home. The way they described it is they're in combat, and 2 or 3 days later they're home. And was one guy told me, they said, we came home from Vietnam so fast, we stood Vietnam dirt under our fingernails at the dinner table. I mean, and he said that was too peaceful, too quick. I don't know if you see that today, but that all leads to the emotional stress and anguish that a lot of the Vietnam vets have 40 years later now. Today, are we seeing any of that, or are we seeing troubles getting back into society? You mentioned a little bit. And also, before you answer that, define post-traumatic stress in light of a combat soldier.
Well, I'm certainly no medical professional. I handle administrative stuff, but post-traumatic stress is some of my soldiers have seen their, in some cases, best friends get killed in a very bloody and violent way. And there's anger, there's a feeling of guilt for some of them because maybe they felt they should have done more to keep them alive. And once the physical part of it is over, the friend is buried, or in some cases they were still there and the friend was medevaced out. But going on from that and coming back to society and coming back and then seeing in some cases their unit comes back later, but without that best friend or that battle buddy. I'm sure the Vietnam vets can tell you about some of the battle buddies, and even World War II. That's been going on, I think, since General Washington's days. But and that's a very difficult thing for them to overcome. And then you bring them back to their house, and again, their spouse has been doing, or family members have been moving along with their lives, and now they focus on the veteran, and for the first 30, 60 days, everything's great. Maybe there's a little parade, maybe there's visiting the schools, parties, but then, the rest of the family goes back to their normal everyday lives. But the soldier, for the last however long he or she was there, can't do that. They're not used to that. They've got to get reintegrated. So that's when the walls start closing in, and then it starts to weigh on them, and they have trouble sleeping. And I mean, I don't know if that's the definition of post-traumatic stress, but I think certainly it's something along those lines.
How about some of I guess it's interesting talking to you. It's almost like talking to a corpsman that's right there, or a minister, chaplain, a priest that is in the combat zones. But you're hearing secondhand, or you're seeing the results of war, and you're seeing something that our society really doesn't see when they think of Iraq or war. And so what are your thoughts on that? I mean, this is real stuff, man. These are the casualties of war.
It's true. It's true. I mean, in many cases, they gave up a successful, civilian career for this deployment. And again, the carpenter that gets blown up and has back and neck issues for the rest of his life, in some cases, we've had a couple come in a wheelchair. They're never going to be a carpenter again. And, that sacrifice, when I think of those soldiers, it makes that drive home on 128 in traffic a little bit easier. It's like, look, it's really not that bad. And every day, almost, somewhere in this country, you're hearing about a soldier that's coming back from Iraq, Afghanistan, or even Kosovo, or even some of the other places where we have soldiers, Korea, and stateside. There's training accidents, and the training nowadays is so real that I could even see where you could end up with PTSD from a training accident. I mean, maybe that's a little bit extreme, but I think you get my point. That in order to fight real, you have to train real. So it's just it's happening all the time. But it's a real part of everyday life. Certainly, it's part of my everyday life. So
I would love to talk to some of these people sometime. Maybe we could work together.
I think that would be great.
I think there's some stories out. I know there's stories out there that need to be told. Just like going back 60 years ago with the World War II guys. They were
Right.
18, 19 years old, landing on beaches
Yep.
under enemy fire. They were dying. And then you look at that generation. Then you look at the Korean veterans, and then the Vietnam vets, and then Desert Storm, or any conflicts we've had. And today, it's two things I've learned: war is hell, and freedom's not free.
That's well said. I agree on both accounts.
But there's differences in that. I don't know. We call the World War II generation the greatest generation, and then rightly so. But I wonder if we could use that today, because I look at you. You're trained, you're military, and I'm thinking we've got a great military.
Best in the world, if you ask me. There's no question about that. Best in the world.
And I'm always so moved by people like yourself that are serving today, and the time and the investment, your life, and your family. They're making a great sacrifice.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's, I think, one of the biggest parts that people who aren't familiar with soldiers who have been deployed is that the part that the family plays. I came back in May of '04, April of '04, and I was, in the newspaper, on the front page of the paper, and, I was the poster child for my city, Haverhill, for the war, because, not necessarily because of me, mostly because I've got a beautiful wife and 3 beautiful children. I'm very, very blessed. And when I was away at the Christmas time, my daughter wrote, the essay, what do you want for Christmas? I just want my dad to come home. So she was on the paper and things like that. But oftentimes forgotten are the family members. And people say, here's a real hero and all that. And I feel proud to wear this uniform. I always have. Every day I put it on, I feel proud. But sometimes the real heroes can be the ones that are left behind. My wife had to explain to my 18-month-old and my 10-year-old that, Dad's not coming back soon. I don't think she ever said he's not coming back, because we all had faith that I would be home. But that gets lost a lot of times. Even I go to church every week, and we pray for sick people, we pray for the military people, and I almost want to go to the priest, and I probably should, and say, can we just add in there, we pray for the military people and the family members that they left behind, because we did our job. We went to Iraq, did our job, came home safely. But my wife every day woke up by herself and did all of the work that I do at home. She got help from our family and her family, but it's not the same. It's not the same as having your husband, and she has no one to talk to, really. You can't lay everything out how you feel to a 16-year-old, or at that time a 10-year-old. So again, to me, some of the real heroes are the spouses and family members of these guys and gals. We have women deployed as well that come back, and if it weren't for her support, I don't know. A lot of us wouldn't make it. I know I wouldn't be the person that I am today. I wouldn't be on this mission right now helping these guys if she didn't say, if you feel that passionate about it. I just decided to extend for another year, probably giving up my civilian job. And I told my wife, I said, I feel strongly about this. She said, it'll be difficult. She said, but I can't, if you have that passion for it, she said, I'm behind you all the way, so.
Right. You mentioned she works.
She's a nurse.
Great. A hospital here? Or?
No, she works nearby in Lawrence at she's a visiting nurse. She works in the intake department at the visiting nurse agency.
Yeah, kind of do the same thing, huh?
She does a lot of the similar things that the nurses that I work with many Army, about 10 Army nurses, full bird colonels down to lieutenants. They do the medical stuff. So she does a lot of the same kind of things, case management. So it's actually, in one case, we had a soldier who was, he had cancer, and it metastasized very quickly. He was fairly local, and the nurse who I work with on my team, his case manager, actually contacted my wife to provide hospice for the last few days of his life, and it was great to have that connection between, you know, I said, well, look, my wife Sally does that. So she called her and they talked, and you know, it just really helped the case manager, and it was great to have that connection. So,
what was the most difficult time other than being away from home when you're in Iraq? What was the hardest thing?
The hardest thing, and my wife said I have to make sure I mention it, was the day we drove up to Iraq from Kuwait. We were on the first wave of people, an advanced party, if you will. We replaced active duty units. Again, we were the first National Guard unit, one of the first ones on the ground. And we were supposed to leave at 6 a.m. and be in Talil by 1 in the afternoon, with a couple of rest stops at the border. And one thing led to another. We had one of the trucks we were supposed to take just died. So we tried to grab the next one that we needed. It didn't have any fuel. We ran and fueled it up. We didn't have the right convoy permit to leave Kuwait. We were delayed there. We got out the gate, not even 2 miles out the gate, the first truck broke down. We've got it on one of the wreckers. We had 2 wreckers with us just in case. We made it to the Kuwaiti border, no problem. Got our briefing to go into Iraq. Took had lunch, MRE lunch. An hour rest stop, started up to Iraq, halfway between the Kuwaiti border and our destination, alongside a big row of trucks that were parked for I don't know what they were doing, it was Marines. One of our convoy vehicles, the tie rod snapped, and the truck took an extreme right turn and hit 3 Marines that were standing on the side of the road between the road and their vehicle. And thank God our last vehicle had an EMT in real life, was our medic. And I was driving the convoy commander, and by the time we realized it was one of our vehicles and we radioed to the other people to keep going, we took a wrecker back with us. And by the time we got back 15 minutes later, he had started 4 IVs, 2 on one guy, 1 on another, 1 on the other. And I've seen during my the training for first aid, if you see a limb that's kind of weird, weirdly displaced, these limbs were weirdly displaced, if that makes sense. I mean, they were arms bent the way they weren't supposed to be bent, and a leg that was not supposed to be bent that way. And it took several hours, but there was a medevac flight, finally a medevac helicopter. We got a report that they all made it, so that was fantastic, and that was. So that was a 3-hour delay. After that, we made it to our next checkpoint, a little roadside support area. One of the other Humvees wouldn't start. So we've now got 2 trucks on the hook, because the one that got in the accident, 1 out the gate. My Humvee, I'm now towing another Humvee with 4 people in it. The tire blows, the rim comes off. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. We're doing maybe 5 miles an hour up the road. There's no one on the roads. I mean, it's like if you've ever driven between like LA and Las Vegas, it's that empty. There's just nothing there except a wrecker with a flashing light. I'm like, my 10-year-old kid with a BB gun could hit us. We're not going to make it. We rolled into the secured area about 1 o'clock in the morning, only about 12 hours late, and at that point I said, somebody's watching over us all, and I know I'm going to make it back. And that was only the first day in Iraq. I still had another, as it turns out, 330-something days left. And every one of us that went over there came back. So that was, I guess, the one story and the scariest part of the whole thing. And the next morning I sat down. We had kind of a little downtime after our adventures the day before, and I wrote it down in a letter to my wife. I said, I need to write this now because if I don't, I'll forget the details. I said, first thing, I'm fine, but this is what happened on the trip up. And I said, if you don't want to read it till I come home, I understand, you know. And it was pretty hairy day. The longest day, I like to call it. So.
Well, I'm glad you wrote it down. Yeah. Rick, tell me how patriotism factors into what you did in Iraq, what you're doing now, and even among the troops that you've interacted with. I mean, is there a strong sense of patriotism in what you're doing?
I think so. When we were in Iraq, it was all new. Now the people that are deployed, you know, they're going with people that have already been there once, and some even twice. When we went, no one had been deployed yet. We had a couple, actually, we did have a few Saudi veterans, and we did actually have 2 or 3 Vietnam veterans with us. But it was a very different situation, and we all became, there was 200 of us roughly that went over together. And we all just kind of bonded. I don't know if it was patriotism. I mean, I think that plays a part of it. You know, another part is with the National Guard, many times units are together for a long period of time. Unlike active duty soldiers where people are leaving and coming all the time, some of the guys had literally known each other for more than 20 years. They've worked side by side in their civilian jobs tie in with the National Guard, they're state technicians. And then there's the few other of us that are just have a civilian job on the outside. We just do it 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks, so we thought, in the summer. But that's part of the patriotism. I think every one of the nurses and the other platoon sergeants and the people that I work with now, there's about 25 of us. I'd say the patriotism that's displayed there is tremendous. Most of them were not forced to come on this mission. As I mentioned, I'm volunteering to stay on for at least another year. And I couldn't imagine, I came back fairly normal, fairly safe, and very safe. But if I were in the situation that some of these soldiers are in coming back now, I'd want the people that are there to take care of me. Because when the bottom line comes, they do the right thing for the soldier. And if you do the right thing for the soldier, 99 times out of 100, it's the right thing. Even if no one's there to tell you, or you can't ask somebody, look, just do it. If it's the right thing for the soldier, then that's the right answer. So I think that patriotism, for sure, runs among my office.
You're in a maintenance unit, you said?
My National Guard unit
Okay.
is a maintenance unit. That's who I was deployed with.
But tell me just briefly about your training, though. I mean, you're trained. If you were attacked, you're prepared to kill somebody or the enemy or whatever. I mean, is that a mentality? Is that a training skill? All of the above? How do you snap your finger and enter into that mode, or can you?
I don't think I do. We're all, everybody's secondary MOS is 11 Bravo infantry. Whether you're
every Marine's a rifleman.
Every Marine's a rifleman. I think that certainly is much truer than with the Army. The Army has more specialty MOSs, medics and mechanics and truck drivers and MPs, but you're all trained, basic training, how to shoot a rifle. Even in our National Guard units, we go to the rifle range once a year. Used to be we didn't take it so seriously. We'd just kind of shoot to go down and have fun, and when are we going back and eating? Lately now it's more, hey, my life and your life could depend on it. And my life might depend on your ability to fire your weapon accurately as well. So, and the training that we've developed, and that's how you learn to fight, is you train to fight. And our training at our National Guard unit has increased tremendously in the last couple of years. We go on, a 3-day exercises to Cape Cod, the big training area down there. Last spring, 2 springs ago, our unit went out to the National Training Center at Fort Irwin. We trained with the 3rd ID, 3rd Infantry Division. They were heading over to Iraq, and the 27 of us or so were heading home. They weren't too happy about that when we left, but so we trained side by side with them, and we went on their gun truck missions. We went out on their patrols and their missions, and they were absolutely stunned at how well a bunch of fat National Guard guys, overweight National Guard guys, can really hold their own in the heat of battle, or at least in the simulated heat of battle. So I think you have to be ready for, if it comes down to it, it's either him or me. And, I think of my 3 kids and my wife. And if it means I've got to put a bullet into somebody to get home to them, then that's what I'm going to do, as much as I don't like to do that, but,
I know it sounds like a cliche, and I rarely would ask this question, but, are you prepared to die for your country? Is that, again, is that instilled in you, or is that something you think about? When it gets into, I'm sure you play scenarios in your head.
I do. Now, I'm right now on this mission. I'm not in that great a danger of being deployed. My most dangerous thing I do now is drive back and forth in the traffic. But when I was over there, yes, I'm prepared. And if I get the call that says you got to stop on this mission now, we're going back, then I'll get back. I get emotional every time I hear that American Soldier song by Toby Keith. I can't help it. I hear him say, I'm prepared to die, that's what it is. Nobody wants to, but somebody has to. And if nobody was prepared, then we wouldn't be the United States, I guess, would we?
And that kind of leads me into another question. You're working with these people that have been wounded, mentally, physically. How do you communicate to our younger generation? And tomorrow at the school, I'm going to attempt to try it a little bit with your help maybe, but how do you communicate to them the price for freedom, the cost for freedom, living in a country where they don't know what it is to not be free? They've always had their freedom, so that's a hard thing to do.
It's extremely difficult. It's been a while since I've had to speak, or I've spoken to some of the kids. When I first came back, I went to probably 4 or 5 different schools. And that was more the hero's welcome kind of thing. I did some work with one of the Discovery Clubs in my town, Haverhill, about a year ago. They were doing postcards and Valentine's Day cards, I think it was, to the soldiers. And one of the women asked me to come in and speak, and so I did. And it was more of a, this is where I was, and they were thrilled with the uniform, and so they could kind of, for them, they were very young, like 2nd grade, 3rd grade. They're awestruck by just the uniform. This is the uniform I go to work in every day, and I come home every day, and I don't go out to dinner in this uniform, but if I have to stop to get groceries or something like that, something quick, people see me, and you know what? I'm proud to wear this. But as far as the kids go, and instilling that, we're here for freedom, I typically wait for them to ask questions and try to answer the questions. But if a teacher, that would be a question that a teacher would probably ask, or maybe a high school student or something. But I just would tell them what I told you, that I'm prepared to die for this country. Not everybody is, but if there weren't those of us that are prepared, then we wouldn't be free. We would be some other nation that probably not resembling what we resemble now. Maybe women would wear veils over their heads. Maybe people would be killed for questioning authority. Here we can pretty much say and do whatever we want. We can burn flags. I'm not happy about it, but it's one of those rights that I protect. And if that's what they feel strongly enough to do, then as long as it's within the law, then I have no problem. I won't say I don't have any problem with it. I accept it. So.
What does freedom mean to you?
Freedom, I guess freedom is just the ability it's the ability for anybody to not be hindered to get anything that they strive hard enough to get. My dad was, an alcoholic for many years, and finally one day turned his life around and owned his own successful enough business to put 2 kids into college. And in some countries he could never do that. There are countries where you're born into, you're going to be a farmer, that's it. And a couple of the books, that Kite Runner book I read about Afghanistan is a fantastic book about the life in Afghanistan after the Taliban, and how their lives are preordained. And here, the lowliest of low people, if they have enough will, can strive to become whatever it is that they want to be. So I guess that, to me, I guess, is freedom.
Good. What does the American flag mean and represent to you as a veteran? Well, I mean, you're not. Well, let me ask you about this. I shouldn't refer to you as a veteran, right? Or should I?
Well, I guess I qualify as both. I've actually have 2 DD-214s, and I'll get another
You
one
understand
after
what
this.
I'm saying.
I
What
do.
what does the flag mean to you?
It's, I mean, again, I get emotional when I hear the national anthem. You know, I try to put myself on that boat watching Fort McKinley, maybe, I think it was written about. And just being able to have the words to put down what he was seeing, and you know, and I try to think back of, you know, those days in Valley Forge, which as kids we learned about and didn't pay much attention to, and, you know, Christmas Day, George Washington says, all right, we're not going to have Christmas dinner, we're going to go across there and, you know, attack the British. I mean, that you know, that's where the flag started, you know, and then pictures in my mind of, you know, the Iwo Jima picture, although I'm certainly, you know, don't know that firsthand, and more recently the 9/11 picture. I mean, 9/11 holds a very deep place in my heart, you know, seeing things like that. I've been several times to the site, the World Trade Center site, and just picturing those firefighters with the flag. And when we first got deployed in 2003, it was only deployed units that wore the flag on their right shoulder, and then sometime right after, everybody wears the flag, and I can't, you know, be prouder to put that on. I mean, the uniform is important, but the most important part to me is that flag right there. And I love when children ask me, you know, why is it facing that way? I said, you know why? I said, because this flag is always pointing in the direction that the battle is going, because we're going that way, and we're not going that way against, you know, running from anybody. And so the flag does hold a very, very dear place in my heart.
I was going to ask you about that, and you just answered that. So the flag,
Oh.
why it's facing.
There you go. So that's why it's always facing the battle and never running away from it.
So, you know, we talked about the family a little bit. What would you contribute to the success of your family? You said it's stronger now than it was before you went, where you hear some Dear John stories and stuff. I mean,
I get it all the time.
how do you, what do you contribute to that?
To me, what I tell everybody is, if you marry your best friend, you know, the rest takes care of itself. And that's what happened. I mean, I guess maybe we didn't know it when we first got married. We were together through high school, at the beginning of high school, at the end of high school, through college, and some rough times. You know, when I said, guess what, I'm not getting that ROTC scholarship, and I'm going to go to active duty, nothing. And she was, you know, not happy, but there. Guess what, we might be deployed one night. The next night, guess what, I'm leaving. But you know, it's we have the best. I have the best relationship. If every marriage were the same as mine, there would be no such thing as divorce. So
What do you have that's different than everybody else?
I don't know. I guess a loving, supportive wife. I guess that's part of it. And
So it's her
communication. It's her fault. Communication, I think, is the key. I don't know if it was my dad. I think at one time told me that the one thing that made him successful with his relationship with my mother was that they never went to bed angry at each other. And I try to do that. Doesn't always work, especially when we argue about who's going to put the kids to bed, because it's already bedtime. But I think it's communication, I think it's support, and I think it's me being able to tell her pretty much anything, I guess, which falls under communication. But and trying to understand that even on this deployment, there are things that make it stressful for her. I leave my house now at 5 in the morning pretty much every day, 5:15. I'm not home sometimes till, 6 o'clock at night. Sometimes I get a call from a soldier who is not having the best relationship like I have and feels like he's in danger to himself or his family. And I get in a car and I drive to upstate New York to stay with him, take him out to dinner, say, where's your head? How you doing? What can we do for you? If the phone call doesn't work, then the command is very supportive and like, okay, get the car, just go, you know, and, you know, we'll worry about the travel part of it later. So that's very important. But I see it all the time. I would say at least 50% of my soldiers have experienced or are experiencing marital issues upon return. And it's a difficult reintegration for some of them. So, and some of it's the spouse, some of it's them. I mean, I don't think no one more than the other, you know.
Well, I think this is very important. So what would be your advice to a family that's being deployed?
A family that, for a first-time deployment, I think would be to, you know, for the member staying home is to don't get upset if the communication isn't there. You know, don't be upset if that letter doesn't come every day or every week or that phone call. I was fortunate, part of my job was to call customers when we were deployed to bring on post and, you know, the nearby surrounding post. So I had access to a phone almost every day. I called home from Thanksgiving on almost every day, even if it was just to say, hey, I love you, I'm fine. And then it got to the point where, like, if I didn't call for some reason, my wife got worried, so that was kind of a bad thing. But my advice would be to, you know, try to understand if that doesn't come every day. And for the soldier, I would tell them, you know, certainly when you come back or when you call, be aware that when you call home, it might be the absolute worst time of the day. You know, your child may have just knocked over a whole plate of food for dinner, or your dog might have just torn up something, whatever it is. So if she gets a little upset or he gets a little upset, give them a break and just chalk it up as it's one of those days. And the same thing for the other spouse. You know, if the soldier doesn't want to talk about what he's doing today or tomorrow, it's probably for the best thing. So, and then on reintegration and coming back home, it's, you know, take things slow. You know, don't try to jump in and do everything. You know, if you can at all get time alone, away from if you have kids, you know, even if it's just a night or a weekend, you know, find somebody to watch those kids and go somewhere, an in-law's house, or, you know, go away to an apartment, you know, a little vacation or something like that. And try to build that friendship back again first, and then the rest, I think, will fall into place.
Are there programs or training before deployment?
Both before and after.
Good.
Before and especially after.
Yeah.
And then even long after, Military One Source, I'm sure you've probably heard of them. It's a great organization. They have many resources available for families that are having marital issues and other issues, and it's free.
So what's your job title now?
Now I'm actually a platoon sergeant.
Okay, do you carry the title of counselor or advocate or priest? Or?
No, but I did sleep in a Holiday Inn Express last night. No, I drove by a Holiday Inn Express on the way here. We have a social worker who's a civilian. She's our one token civilian. My job is to contact these guys. They call every morning because we don't have a formation. I don't see them every day. Some of them live in upstate New York. Some of them live in New Jersey. They call in every morning. Hey, it's Sergeant Driscoll. It's me. I'm so-and-so. I'm doing great. Talk to you later. And some of them I call back and I talk to them, you know, at least once a week, maybe twice. How's things going? Is there anything I can help you with? They call their case manager, the nurse, you know, every week. And they do a more thorough charting and they do notes, and, you know, then the nurse, and if there's something, a red flag that comes up, I go to the nurse. I say, hey, did you talk to specialist so-and-so? Yeah, did he sound okay? No, you know, and then we get involved with that. But I guess I have dabbled a little bit into everything, you know, maybe more than I should, but I try to fix everything, you know, just because I think I'm trying to do the right thing for the soldier.
Well, that's good advice. That's not a 10-step formula. That's
if you can work out your differences before you go to bed, I think it goes a long way, you know. And I also think you need to take time to get away from your kids for a little bit, to be a little grown-up time. My wife and I went out on a date last Saturday, you know, first date we've had in a while.
good.
But fortunately, we have an old enough child to babysit. We just have to make sure that give her plenty of notice because she's got her plans as well. You will be staying home tonight to watch the kids, honey, okay? And we pay her, you know, she's a babysitter. So it's important.
Well, there's a story within the story here, isn't there? Can you see that? This is good. You should write something. Maybe you have. really enjoyed talking to you, and I trust you. You just seem like you really were strong in what you believe in, and I really admire that in you. And
Well, thank you.
I want to thank you on camera for serving our country, by the way.
Oh, well, you're welcome. And I thank you and everybody here for what you're doing to bring some of this to light. If I can help, whether it's a Vietnam veteran, I dare say not a World War II veteran, but more importantly, the OIF and OEF guys that are coming back or getting ready to go. I don't know who's going to see this, but to let them know that there are agencies out there to help them. A lot of times all they have to do is ask. But a lot of times they can't ask. They try and they can't. And that's where people like you and me and some of the other professional people come into play. And the VA, the VA's making great strides to, get out of that born of the 4th of July stigma that was attached for some time. And some of the VA people, most of the VA people are fantastic at what they do. And a lot of times they're taking a lot less money than they could do. The doctors and nurses, they could get more money on the outside. And a lot of them feel as passionate about what they're doing, I think, as I do. Maybe not quite, but pretty close.
But thank you, Rick.
You're welcome. Thank you for your support.
That's a lot of what I'm trying to do. Is I asked you the question about the kids, is getting into schools when I can, have occasion, and challenging them with what we're talking about here. And as you'll see in the video tomorrow, it grabs their attention. And then it's like an open door to talk a few minutes to them. So we'll have an hour total, so the video's 35 minutes. But I'll probably have you address them for a couple of minutes.
Sure.
I'm going to try to get a World War II vet.
That'd be great.
We had a Vietnam vet here this morning. Oh, he could use your help. He was shaking in his chair. I felt so bad for him. And Joe that was here, or
Brian.
Oh my gosh, he says, and then halfway through his interview, he says, I'm there. And he was,
Really?
we relived this experience
Wow.
with him, and it was that bone chilling. I mean, that's sometimes what it's like interviewing these veterans that have been
Yeah.
in combat, that it's just like going back in time.
I'm sure it is. I mean,
They're seeing it, they're hearing it, the explosion.
yeah.
And you talk about coming home, they never came home.
No.
A lot of them, so
No.
it's unfortunate.
No, thank God the VA and the society and the military, mostly the military, realized what a complete disservice we did for many, many of those guys, and in some cases women, and they've taken drastic steps to help, the key word, reintegrate. And that's what it is. It's a reintegration. It's not just a coming home. Coming home, everybody comes home one way or another. But reintegrating and successfully reintegrating does not happen all the time. And we see it with the men and women that are underneath, that my soldiers. And I just can't say enough about the sacrifices that they've made, and they say, I say, well, look, if you need anything, call me on the weekend. Oh, I don't want to bother you. I'm like, look, you got blown up by an IED, you've had how many surgeries to put your face back together, and you'll never be the same, and you're bothering me on a weekend. I'm like, it's the least I can do is to pick up the phone and say, can I help you? And all of the people that I work with feel the same way. So, but thank God we've taken some tremendous strides to get some help to the people that need help. Not everybody. Some people slip through the cracks, even on our program. We can only do so much, but.
So you work with people that have been blown up by these mines, you said, lost limbs maybe, or?
Yes, I've had some. For the most part, most of our people are the TBIs, the traumatic brain injuries, and the PTSD. And then, the leg issues or the shoulder issues or the shrapnel in the leg. And nothing, part of the one of the more rewarding parts of our job is when the medical board comes back on a soldier who, gave up so much, and they say, yes, you're going to be 100%. You're going to get 100% disability rating. And then the VA kicks in more money, and the traumatic life insurance that comes along with the life insurance that we all have gives him $100,000, and he can buy or put down a significant chunk on a house out near Worcester. And he's been able to, get on with his life. I'd love for you to meet one of the hero stories of our program is a soldier who, from the western part of the state, was in an IED explosion. Every part of his body that was not covered with clothes was scarred. His face was pretty much completely melted off. Spent many months at Fort Sam down in Texas. Fort Sam Houston is the Army Burn Center. Came up to our program for about a year and a half, just recently, actually still on leave, just about done. He's a carpenter who fortunately will be able to do that work again, should he want to. Got the $100,000 life insurance, bought a house, put the money down on the house. He's also an artist, many drawings of lighthouses in the area. He's been able to, get some of his work notarized, or not noticed from this program. When he was down at Fort Sam Houston, he went down last July for his final few surgeries. It's a very slow process. They have to take skin and put it here. He got his new nose, and I said, go with the Jimmy Durante, go with something good. You've got this chance now. And he laughed and joked around, and while he was there in December, they opened up a Warrior and Family Support Center. Unbelievably gorgeous place, on post at Fort Sam, set in a rustic setting where they've got flat screen TVs. They've got 2 rooms just for the soldiers that want to do the gaming Nintendo things, and 4 flat screen TVs, one here, one here, one here, one here. Dining facility, unbelievable state-of-the-art kitchen, conference center, and he designed a sculpture that is on the fire, that goes up the fireplace. It's huge. It's as big as from the floor to the ceiling. And he designed it and worked with the people in Dallas, and they put it in, and it's just so the company commander that I work with and I flew down for this grand opening, and his case manager, and it was, generals everywhere. Actually, Bob Woodruff, who was an ABC reporter who was blown up in Iraq, was there as well. I got to meet him. He's one of my heroes as well. It was just, and that was one of the most rewarding things. And now he's hopefully just going to be, doing the art thing, because he's got the disability coming in, and he's still got a long way to go. He's still got some more surgeries that the VA is going to take care of, but just got a great attitude. I mean, if everybody had that attitude, I don't know. This, it's just another example of the greatest Army, the greatest military certainly on the planet.
Well, it puts things in perspective to see what you see, and like you said, driving down the highway in the traffic. Yeah, right, I get it. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
but people watching this, maybe, hopefully, 1 or 2 of them will say, you know what, maybe I will go a little bit slower, maybe, or something like that. I don't know. We're all busy, and I catch myself sometimes, and then I realize where I am and where I've been and where some other people are, and then it just says, okay, just back off a little bit, take a deep breath.
It sounds like you have got faith in God, and
Very much so.
Helping you through these times. So,
Very much so.
the people that you interact. Well, we definitely will have to talk sometime about getting some of these stories. Okay.
Sure, absolutely.
So
I'd love nothing more, and I'm sure everybody at our unit would love to get those stories
I'll get
out.
you a copy of this, and you can show it to whoever. But I think it's important that we talk, and there's a story here with what you're doing. I sure appreciate what you're doing, man.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your support, everybody, really. It's very nice that you can, you offered this to me. Never shy.
Real quickly, why did you call me? You saw the article. What?
My wife saw the article, and she said, "Hey, read this." So I read it. I don't normally read the paper. She's religiously reads the paper, and she said, "I think you should call him." I said, "Well, it kind of says that he's looking for World War II people in Vietnam." And she said, "Well, it says veteran. You are a veteran." And she said, "Look, it'd be a chance for you not only to tell your story that when you were there and firsthand, but now you're seeing it several years later on the other end of things, in a way, with soldiers coming back and what you're giving back." And I said, "Yeah, I guess you're right, And I don't know. She says, don't play down the hero part, because I tell people I don't really consider myself a hero, but I think I feel more of a hero in what I'm doing with these soldiers. When I get a soldier that gets almost what he deserves because of the sacrifice he or she made. I keep saying he, but I mean she as well.
Sure.
And I feel more of a hero helping them than I did, coming back. We did our job, we did it well, and everyone in our unit, I guess, is a hero. So that's why I called. I said, well, I'll talk to him, and if it's something that he wants to, hear, then I'm never shy in front of the camera, as you probably can guess.
Well, you're doing really well. I'm going to give you an A. But, one more comment, just it's a part of society that we don't think about. We think about the sacrifices of war, the crosses and the cemeteries, which they are, but look at all the living sacrifices that we have. I mean, it's amazing. And what's amazing, see, as you talk, I think, it's like, I think of you guys, you're healthy, you go to war, whatever, and then somebody's injured or lose a limb, come back to society, you know, there's a brief moment of maybe, you know, what they did, but then they go back and live their lives, and who cares?
Well, and that's the part, many of them can't live their lives again, and that's part of where we come in, part of the not deals, but the agreements that we've had, and this is snowballing. I mean, it started with the Army Corps of Engineers. We share the same building down in Concord. We're just off of Hanscom Air Force Base. They employed a couple of our soldiers, work sites, again, volunteer situation. One of them got hired on full-time. And now representatives from FEMA, you know, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, DOL, Department of Labor, GSA, they're all getting involved now. Part of it is DOL has a lot of jobs that they can no longer pay because of cutbacks. And what a fantastic way for them to be able to get some work done with a soldier who is, you know, maybe he can only answer the phone right now. And the woman came to speak to us a couple weeks ago and said that the shining example for her was a soldier. She had gotten his phone number, called and called and called, didn't answer, emailed him, he didn't email back, finally tracked down his address, called the house number, and his mother answered, and she said, yes, can you please come and talk to my son? He's, you know, suffering from PTSD. He's, you know, can you come and talk to him? She came, she talked to him, she convinced him to come into the office for an interview, and she got him to start, it's at the JFK building in Boston, and he started out by doing light work around the office, and once he finished up his tour and finished his medical hold situation, he's now GS 11, you know, government service 11, probably making $45,000, $50,000 a year. So that's one of her success stories. I wish I could tell you I know who that is, but again, so that's almost like a third-hand story. But it's snowballing. We've got agencies contacting us almost weekly to help. Hey, how can we help? How can we do this? How can we do that? And again, that's another part of the reason for me being here is maybe somewhere, I don't know who's going to see it, but maybe I can, you know, reach out to somebody, if somebody's in that position that can help some of these soldiers, then...
I failed to mention one thing, very minor, but we're actually live right now on national television, so if you want to say something...
Hey, everybody.
Yikes. I'm going to stop your camera.